Mitakoyepi, my relatives. It's an honor speaking to you guys again. It's my third Unification video. My name is Courage. I also go by Redtail. My family's Tarahumara and Lakota. I'm from Nebraska. I live in Los Angeles. The topic I wanted to talk about today, I'm going to get right to it, is this really difficult subject called decolonizing. And what does it mean to decolonize? But is it for everybody? Or is it just for Indigenous peoples? I think it's the former, actually. And I guess we can just start off by talking about what decolonizing is to me anyways. I think decolonizing is actually probably to most people, if you're Indigenous, it's realizing where your family comes from. What motherland is made of, the bones of your ancestors. And what traditions and stories and languages and songs and dances are attached to that heritage. What lessons and stories did your ancestors have to pass down that they wanted you in particular to preserve and protect and pass down to your children and grandchildren? That's the obvious, I think, definition of decolonizing. But what does decolonizing mean for everybody else? Quite honestly, it's complicated because I don't think we've really made that jump yet. It's not enough for Indigenous peoples to decolonize because we live in a world that is increasingly anti-Indigenous, that really doesn't embrace values that are self-sustaining. The colonizers' world that we live in embraces values that are self-defeating and self-destructive, wasteful, selfish, things I talked about in the last talk. But to me, what decolonizing could mean for everybody else beyond that previous definition is it really means kind of humbling yourself to where life isn't all about you. Life isn't something where the actions that you take are all about your future and what you want for yourself or even your immediate family. To me, decolonizing for everybody else means learning to step outside yourself and realize that all your actions, all the things that you do with your life, not only transform the community around you and make our communities either horrible places to live or wonderful places to feel cared for, but also that the things that you do with your life impact not only the future, but your grandchildren's future and the world that they live in. Indigenous peoples will often talk about how everything that a leader does, he must do with the knowledge of how it will impact 7 generations from now. The world that we will create, that we will never see. That's a more expanded definition that's not so often talked about. But also, what does it mean for average everyday people who are not Indigenous to decolonize? Do they need to? Well, for me, absolutely. I mean, whether or not they realize it, they're living in a world, like I said, is not self-sustaining. They're living in a world where our actions have had such a profound impact, our selfish actions, that climate change alone is creating a future for our grandchildren where they're going to be experiencing floods and fires and hurricanes and droughts like we've never seen, and all of the consequences from that. Nations fighting each other, communities getting desperate, crime and self-centeredness just increasing in ways we've never seen. And but that's also, even that is not the end of it. To me, decolonizing means, to put it in a way that I think non-Indigenous peoples would understand, it means grounding oneself in virtues again. Because we live in a world where, if you've taken philosophy, you'll understand these concepts. But there's these, but when you talk about ethics, you can break ethics down into different types of ethics. The type of ethics that I feel personally, that I follow as an Indigenous person, could be categorized or labeled as virtue ethics. What's the kind thing to do? What's the compassionate thing to do? What's the honest thing to do? What's the thing, what action could I take that is the best reflection of my character, and for me personally, the best reflection of what my parents, my grandparents, my ancestors wanted me to carry with myself in my life. But we see now that the colonizers' world is actually very much not that. And we probably have a lot to teach them in regards to that, because I'm sure anyone can relate to what I'm just about to share. It's very difficult living with people that think like I'm about to describe. But we live in a world now where duty ethics are how everyone needs to live their lives. What is the law? What is the way that was mandated for me to follow? What is the company policy? What is the correct procedure? What exactly is the thing I should be doing to prevent liabilities? Forget what the honest thing is. What does the script say? Forget what they're asking me. Let me tell them let me give them what answers I'm allowed to give them. Forget what exactly I am doing by doing the job that I'm doing. What are my orders? What am I being told to do? Those are duty ethics. It's following this mandated procedure that honestly is very white, very colonized. One thing that you'll notice, a lot of people notice, I think, is that you'll see this in a lot of stories, a lot of movies these days that more accurately depict what it was like during the conflict between colonizers and native peoples. But native peoples would always be battling, locking horns with white people and colonizers. It would usually go like this. We, as an indigenous person, they would say, we need this, you are doing that, it is hurting this. It is not fair for us to go through this. It is not fair for these people for this to happen to them. You need to stop doing this because it's not the right thing to do. And then the colonizers would often come back with, well, that's the law. Well, procedure mandates. Well, according to this contract, according to this treaty, according to our orders, according to this, very finely worded legal agreement, where we talk about all the nuances of the terms and conditions and what we should and shouldn't do, and what you can and can't do, and what you agreed to, and or what you were forced to agree to because you had no choice. You signed it. That's the end of story. Too bad. Sorry. Too bad for you. It's like the colonizers' world, the non-native world, the world that's not grounded in values that we try to reclaim in decolonizing. They value this structured, almost sometimes mindless and spiritless thinking, where it's not about your connection with the other person. It's not about you thinking about what you're doing, getting yourself to stop and realize, how is my life, how I'm living it right now, how is it impacting 7 generations now? There's very little of that. Nowadays, there's a lot more, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Period, end of story. I'm not questioning it. And it operates off of this almost linguistic dogma where everything has been hashed out, all the details have been hammered out. The contract, sometimes hundreds of pages long, mandate that a certain something go unquestioned, even if the policy is horrible, even if your job is something horrible, even if it means outright lying to the person in need, the customer, the person that oftentimes is at your mercy, And you'll hear the reasoning behind why people do this. I can't jeopardize my job. I got to feed my kids, etc. But the thing is that, do you realize still what kind of world you're creating for your kids? How many of us, indigenous and not, have struggled immensely because our needs and our special circumstances, and sometimes our marginalized suffering, flies in the face of this kind of thinking, where we are almost sometimes begging, or sometimes if you're the angry type, shouting you know, this is unfair, this is messed up, why are you doing this to me? And they will just look at you and be like, I'm just doing my job, sir, it's just the policy. I'm sure all of you have heard this, you know. And this is something that I've experienced more often than anything else in Los Angeles. And I'm sure it's something we are experiencing around the world. And it's very anti-Indigenous. It's ill-genuine, it's inauthentic, but it literally robs everyone of their humanity and replaces it with like a robotic programming where we're not supposed to think about what we're doing, why we're doing, and what kind of impact it's having. It pervades every type of mindset and thinking and action, from every kind of type of thing that corporations do, to everything that people do in social services, to things that people do in law enforcement, especially, you know. It doesn't matter, you know, that I did this to this person, or I did that to that person, or, you know, I'm being a horrible person to you. This is my job. This is what I'm being told to do. I'm not breaking any rules. I'm not breaking any laws. Therefore, it's okay. It's a very colonized way of thinking, where it's like, as long as it's written down somewhere, it's completely, what do you call it? It's immune to any kind of moral analysis. It's immune to us saying, legitimately, this is wrong, stop doing it. It's a very colonized way of thinking, where it's like, if it's written down somewhere as a law, a policy, a procedure, something, then it's to go unquestioned. It's to go, you know, the law is the law. We didn't care about laws. We cared about lessons. We cared about teachings. We cared about being better human beings and reaching inside ourselves and trying to aspire towards that with virtues. We didn't care about, you know, about trying to fit everything in these tight little boxes and saying, you know, okay, let's mandate something then to where, you know, everyone has to follow the exact same things, regardless of, you know, how unique their circumstances are. To me, for non-Indigenous peoples to decolonize is to start questioning this mindset, because I feel like it's a huge part of the problem. And it's also, it's not what Indigenous peoples want to see people becoming. And it's also the very thing that we fought against for hundreds of years, that kind of mindset, where it's like, no matter what we had to say, no matter how much we poured our heart out or eloquently put into words why something is wrong, as long as it's written down somewhere, it's morally okay. You know, legality and morality are completely different things. And oftentimes the colonial world has used legality as a replacement for morality, or as an excuse for it. And I think for me, personally anyways, that is what it means for the rest of the world to decolonize, at least on one front. So I'm going to leave you with a question, and that is, you know, how do you see the world around you, even if it's your tribal community, which oftentimes is colonized in a number of ways? How are they not, you know, decolonizing by embracing this mindset? What are they doing that is not dealing with matters of the heart, but dealing with matters of legality, cold, hard, paper, words, you know, all size fits all kind of mindset? I want you to start questioning things. I want you to start listening with your heart, looking with your heart, seeing the world around you, and just telling yourself, is this right? Is this the kind, compassionate, honest, sincere, courageous thing to do? And oftentimes I think you'll find that the answer is no. So, thanks a lot, guys. I had a lot to say this time, but I definitely have a lot to say from an Indigenous perspective living in this kind of world. So, I appreciate you guys, and, you know, to all my relatives, matako yayo yasin, dokshake.